You won't believe the absurdity of this. My HOA tried to destroy my life over a $5 fine. Not $500, not $5,000, literally $5. But here's the kicker. When I didn't pay, they escalated like some wannabe mafia, and it all came crashing down the day their so-called HOA cops broke into my house, not realizing my son, a Special Forces veteran, was waiting inside. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. It started when I got a letter in the mail. Failure to pay your $5 fine will result in legal action. I stared at it in disbelief. The supposed violation? A decorative infraction because I had a wooden bird feeder in my backyard that didn't match community aesthetics. I laughed at first, thinking it was a typo. Who hounds someone over the cost of a sandwich? But this HOA wasn't normal. The president, Lorna Wells, treated her role like she was running a private government. She had a little group of men who strutted around the neighborhood in black uniforms with HOA security patches. They weren't real officers, but they carried radios, tasers, and even cheap knockoff badges they'd flash at residents. At first, it was just intimidation letters, extra fines tacked on every week, climbing from $5 to $50 to $150. When I refused to pay out of principle, the tone got nastier. They started showing up on my lawn, snapping photos, leaning over my fence. My wife was terrified every time she saw them parked at the end of our driveway. Now here's where it really got strange. I caught one of them leaving a flyer with a fake payment link. They had created a bogus portal that looked like an official HOA website, except the money was rerouted to some personal account. That's not just shady, that's wire fraud under federal law. I knew this was bigger than a silly fine, but I wasn't the only one who knew how to handle situations like this. My son, Luke, had just returned from deployment. He's Special Forces, disciplined, sharp, and not easily intimidated. He told me flat out, "Dad, these aren't just power-hungry neighbors. They're running a scam, and scams escalate when you push back. Let me handle the surveillance." So, while I played the role of the clueless homeowner, Luke set up cameras, logged license plates, and started building a file. We weren't just going to fight this HOA in meetings. We were preparing to expose an entire operation. And then one day, it all boiled over. The breaking point came on a Saturday. I was upstairs reading when I noticed flashlights bouncing across my lawn through the blinds. At first, I thought it was just kids, but then I saw the black uniforms. 3 of the so-called HOA cops were prowling across my property like they owned the place. Luke was already awake. The man had instincts I'll never understand. He stood in the dark by the stairwell, calm as a coiled spring, whispering, "Dad, don't panic. Let's see what they're here for." I peered through the slats and watched them circle my back porch. One of them pulled out what looked like a crowbar. That's when my stomach dropped. This wasn't a bluff anymore. They were about to force their way into my house over a $5 fine. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe, because the story is only going to get better. The back door creaked as the crowbar wedged under the lock. Luke gave me a look and held one finger to his lips. Then, in absolute silence, he slipped into the shadows of the hallway like a predator in the wild. The door burst open with a crash. 3 men in black uniforms stormed in, pretending to be law enforcement. One barked, "Search the house? He thinks he can ignore our authority? Not tonight." That was their mistake. The first man through the doorway didn't even see Luke coming. My son moved like lightning. He grabbed the guy's wrist, twisted it, and the crowbar clanged to the floor. In one motion, Luke shoved him against the wall and dropped him with a sharp elbow to the gut. The man wheezed and crumpled. The second intruder lunged forward, swinging a baton. Luke sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and with a clean judo throw, slammed him onto the hardwood floor so hard the walls shook. The man howled, clutching his shoulder. The third one froze, clearly realizing they were in way over their heads. He stammered, This is HOA business. You can't touch us." Luke stepped closer, eyes hard as steel. "You broke into the wrong house." Then, with military precision, he swept the guy's legs and pinned him face first to the ground with his boot pressed firmly between the man's shoulder blades. From the stairs, my heart was pounding, but I couldn't help staring in awe. It wasn't a brawl, it was controlled, professional. Luke didn't fight like a hothead. He neutralized them one by one with barely any wasted movement. The intruders groaned on the floor, gasping for air. Luke leaned down to the last one and growled, "You came in here armed, impersonating officers, and tried to break and enter over a fake fine. That's at least 3 felonies. You're not walking away from this." I finally found my voice and called 911. When the dispatcher answered, I didn't sugarcoat it. This is a home invasion. 3 armed men in fake uniforms. My son has subdued them. Send police now. Luke kept them pinned, calm as stone, until we saw red and blue lights flashing through the blinds. And that's when the truth about our HOA's little police force began to unravel. The flashing lights outside lit up the neighborhood like a crime scene from a movie. Squad cars skidded to a stop in front of my house, and real officers rushed in. Guns drawn, they swept the hallway, only to find Luke standing tall, boot planted on one intruder's back, with the other 2 groaning on the floor. One officer shouted, "Step back!" Luke raised his hand slowly, calm as ever. "Relax, officer." They broke in, armed and impersonating law enforcement. The situation's under control. I hurried down the stairs, hands shaking but voice steady. These aren't police. They're HOA goons dressed up to look like some kind of security force. They broke into my home over a $5 fine. The cops exchanged quick glances, then cuffed the 3 men without hesitation. You're under arrest for breaking and entering, assault, and impersonating law enforcement. The leader of the intruders tried to protest, coughing as he was hauled upright. We're authorized by the HOA. This is official business. One officer glared at him. You're trespassers. And that uniform? It's not worth the polyester it's stitched on. As the cops read them their rights, the neighborhood began to gather outside. Porch lights flicked on up and down the street. Whispers spread fast. The HOA's private cops got busted. That's when one of the officers turned to Luke. Sir, you moved like you've done this before. Who exactly are you? Luke gave the faintest smirk. U.S. Army, Special Forces, retired. The words hit like a thunderclap. The neighbors who had crowded close gasped. Some of the same people who had quietly supported the HOA's bullying looked downright ashamed. Others started cheering. The arrested men shouted from the squad car, "We were just following orders. Lorna Wells told us to." That name made my stomach twist. Lorna Wells, HOA president. She had been on a power trip for years, but this, sending armed enforcers into my house, crossed into insanity. The officers didn't waste time. They radioed for a supervisor, and within minutes, Lorna Wells herself was being dragged out of her mansion across the cul-de-sac. She came storming over, bathrobe flying, screaming, "This is a misunderstanding. They were only collecting dues." The supervisor cut her off cold. "Lady, what you did is criminal solicitation. You sent men to impersonate officers, break into a private residence, and threaten a homeowner. You're done." I'll never forget the look on her face as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. The fallout was immediate. Lorna was charged with conspiracy, trespassing, and ordering an unlawful entry. The so-called HOA cops faced felony charges for impersonating police and home invasion. The county prosecutor personally called me the next day, assuring me this case would set a precedent. And in the middle of it all, Luke stayed steady. He didn't brag, didn't strut, just told me later, "Dad, bullies are the same everywhere. Doesn't matter if it's in a foreign desert or a neighborhood with picket fences. You stand your ground." The HOA thought they could send fake cops to scare me, but instead, they got exposed, arrested, and destroyed by my own son. And trust me, this neighborhood will never forget what happened.